Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. Today's date is October the 12th in the year of our Lord 2023. Now, we're going to take a short diversion, if you will, into current happenings in the news today, and then we're going to attempt to take a deep dive into one of the issues that affects everyday Americans going into the next election. Hot button issue, as always in all elections, and that is the economy and jobs in America. But first of all, we want to make a brief comment, a brief statement on the situation in the Middle East. And we'll touch on it more as we deal in foreign policy as one of our issues of discussion going into the election. Our position here at Soluble is that when it comes to the Middle East, a two-state solution is better than one war. Proven again, once again, that two is better than one or greater than one. A two-state solution is better than one war. Now, this situation has been, ongoing throughout presidential administrations, as far back as I can remember, as far back as, President Carter, the days of Yasser Arafat. So this thing has been, ebbing and flowing, raging and ceasing to rage for a number of years here now. And the two-state solution has often been discussed, but it never really seems to gain any traction as far as, sincere negotiations and both parties meeting at the table and hammering out an agreement. Now, we know that from the Palestinians' point of view, it has to do with, problems occurring or arising, after World War II. And, certain segment or a certain population of Jewish people were relocated to that area to form the state. And, that's where, the vast majority of Palestinians see the problem beginning to occur with the Jewish people that were relocated after and or during World War II. They seem to have had no problem before then with their Jewish neighbors. So, it's, as I said, it's a situation that has been, ongoing forever and a day. There's settlements being built by the Israelis in disputed territory. Former President Trump, he went over to the region soon after taking office and did what no other U.S. president before him had done, maybe because of tensions that could possibly have arisen. But he went over to Israel and moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. Now, up until that point in time, no other U.S. president has done it. So, there's two sides to every story here. And as I said, violence on either side. Opposition here at Soluble is that, once again, just like here in America, we should be looking for a peaceful solution, because bloodshed on the innocents, on people in general, it does humanity a disservice when we as human beings, can't sit down at the table of brotherhood and discuss, how we're going to live amongst each other, different races, different religions, living together as neighbors. So, with that being said, we'll begin to move on into today's topic of discussing the economy and an issue that's affecting us here in America, coming into another election in 2024. But in closing for now on that situation, as I said, a two-state solution for these two groups of people is better than one war. And we are urging Israelis and Palestinians alike to, come to the table of brotherhood and reach an agreement. Now, when the Israelis are violating the peace accord, starting to build new settlements in disputed territory, we as Democrats and as Americans in general, we expect our government to do the right thing. American government position has always been, we're an ally with Israel, and that's American policy. But we expect, as honest brokers or mediators, that both sides should, you know, respect and abide by the rules that are put in place, based on whatever agreement is hammered out. Because it's been proposed a two-state solution, two groups of people living side by side, but nothing has ever become of it. So whether it's the Palestinians violating or whether it's the Israelis violating, we expect our government to stand firm and be honest and solid mediators and hold each party's to account, hold each party's feet to the fire when they're violating whatever agreement that has been agreed upon. And so, as I said, we'll touch on it more as we're dealing with foreign policy. But, two wrongs don't make a right here. And there's suffering on both sides. There's suffering on both sides that's leading to, these hostilities, these clashes. And, with the United States government being honest brokers and honest mediators, we expect our government to hold both sides equally accountable when the agreement is hammered out, when it comes to what it takes or what you should be doing to abide by the agreement that you signed off on, and if either side is violating or not abiding by the agreement, then let the sanctions or whatever punishment is necessary begin to bring that particular side or both sides back to the table for honest brokerings and honest dealings. So until we get to foreign policy, that's all we have to say about the situation in the Middle East. And let's just hope and pray that all parties involved can negotiate a peaceful way out of this thing, with a two-state solution that both Palestinians and Israelis come to the table of brotherhood in sincere agreement and touch upon, to establish an environment, a territory, a space on this planet where both sides can live in peace as neighbors. And so that's our position until we move to foreign policy, where we may, visit this subject again. Okay, in dealing with the economy, jobs, it's very important, to all of us as Americans. And as we've stated here, it's soluble. This is two different ideals by two different parties on, what is best for America when it comes to creating jobs and a strong economy. Both sides talk about deficits being bad and reducing deficits. You hear the Democrats saying that, they're bringing bills to the floor, they're bringing about legislation, but all of it is paid for, and it doesn't add to the deficit. This is the Democrat stance when they're bringing jobs. The Republicans, their side is in a big opposition to regulations. To hear conservatives in America tell it, regulations is, a job killer. It's a wet blanket on job growth. And so, it's really, a love affair, especially on the right, with fossil fuels, and unwillingness to let go and to explore renewables, renewable energy, going into the future to reduce our carbon footprint and may somewhat stem the tide of climate change. Now, we've seen the jobs report that just came out in October, for the month of September. We've seen the job numbers, and they look good. Manufacturing is on a serious rebound. Now, in all fairness, in the former administration, in the former Trump administration, job growth was steady. He had steady numbers in job growth up until the pandemic hit. And then, the bottom began to fall out. Just say based on leading experts and fact checking, the bottom began to fall out sometime right there in the beginning of 2019. So practically a year before the pandemic really solidly hit and the bottom really began to fall out. But up until that time, the former President Trump had steady job growth numbers. But here is where it begins to separate, from the two ideals of jobs created, what's best for the economy in America, and strong job growth with fair wages. Now, we see that, as I said, the job numbers look good. Manufacturing is on the rebound. So jobs are being created under a Democratic administration. Prices, wages, that's another discussion. And that's a discussion that we need to have, because it can always get better. But what we would like to break down to you tonight here at Soluble is how regulations work and or don't work, or may affect you in a negative and or positive way. Now, when you see job growth under a Republican administration, and they take away all these regulations that they say is a job killer, is a wet blanket on job growth. Regulations, is basically protections that are put out there for the American worker and the environment. So that's where our democratic ideals here at Soluble begin to separate from those from our colleagues on the right, because we don't feel as though we have to create jobs and at the same time create more pollution. And that's pretty much where you have to look as an American voter when it comes to job growth, through Democrats and or Republicans. With Republicans, the gloves are gonna come off. There's not gonna be little to no regulations with this job growth. But the question is, can we have job growth in the country and clean air and water at the same time? Can we have job growth in the country with worker safety put at the top of the list, or one of the first priorities at the same time? So let me give you a quick example of what we're talking about. Here you have a multi-billionaire. And, in cases where there is the owner of a company or a business that employs, a substantial amount of people, in most cases, they're going to be more multi-billionaires. And we're not knocking that. We're not criticizing that here at Soluble. But where we begin to separate with our democratic ideals of job creation and job growth is, say the government comes in and they look around at said multi-billionaire's plant operation, where workers are being employed, where waste is being discharged and are accumulated as a byproduct of what the company might be making. Okay, the government comes in from a democratic perspective and says, workers are inhaling these fumes over here, so we have to do something about that. There's a machine that they make that will eliminate all these, this poor air quality that's being produced by the byproduct of what you're making. Or the federal government may come in and say, this is a safety problem right here. And, workers are going to get hurt. There's going to be limbs broken. There could possibly be, serious neck injuries and or death. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to install these safety mats, these safety zones to prevent this from happening. So the multi-billionaire employer looks at this and says, this regulation right here is going to cost me money. So what's the worst that can happen here? You take a multi-billionaire, the government comes in and regulates certain things that are not safe for the workers and or the environment. And so this multi-billionaire goes from 58 billion, and we just putting the number out here. He starts out at 58 billion. The federal government comes in and regulates him for worker safety and for the environment. Now, he's down to Let's just put another 40. Let's say put another. Let's say 40 billion. We begrudge no one for wealth or for the amount of wealth that they have here at Soluble. But where is the problem here? And so this is what you're getting from a Republican point of view versus a Democratic point of view. With Republican policies, where they gut regulations, they take work regulations away. Now workers are in harm's way. With that fat paycheck you may be bringing home, and with that steady job growth that you may be having, cancer may be down the line with that fat paycheck. So while you're accumulating wealth, you're steady getting sicker and sicker. So what good is the wealth? How can you enjoy it? From a sick bed, from a deathbed. And this is where we're at, with Republicans gutting regulations. You have a individual worth $58 billion. And because of regulations where he has to add certain safety mechanisms, he has to discharge his waste in a different way to protect the environment. What is the problem here if you're dropping down a couple of billions? Is this a complaint where, I had 4 mega yachts and now I can't afford a 5th one because of all these regulations? This is ridiculous. And so, to the American voter, this is important that you know this. When you have a Republican administration that's gutting regulations, whether they're protecting the American worker or the environment, you're going to be, you may accumulate wealth. You may be becoming richer, but at the same time, you're becoming sicker. So we have to look at the other side, and not to say the Democrats have everything right and they've crossed every T and dotted every I. But can we create jobs from a Democratic perspective with necessary regulations in place that doesn't stymie job growth, and at the same time keeps the environment safe, keeps our drinking water clean, keeps the air that we breathe, fresh and not full of harmful contaminants for those out there who may suffer from asthma, certain bronchitis, or even if you don't suffer from any of those, we want clean air to breathe. And so that's pretty much where it's at to the American people when it comes to the economy and jobs. Can our colleagues on the right create jobs? Now we hear, the vast majority of the candidates who are running, who are unopposed to, fracking, drill baby drill, whatever it any kind of fossil fuel, coal, you name it. But now what they're not doing while they're telling us that, this is a plan for job growth and job creation, what they're not giving you and what they're not telling you is, okay, at the same time while we're doing this, we have a plan for when, these fossil fuel productions, create more frequent storms. The wind blows stronger. The water rises higher. They don't have a plan for you there. So once again, you're bringing home a fat paycheck, but to what home? Your home just got blown over. Or are you renting? Do you have insurance in your state? None of this is being talked about. While, those on the right are leaning towards drill, baby drill, fracking, and doubling down. They don't have a plan for you when, said disasters arise. That leading scientists and leading experts are saying that they're becoming more frequent because of the carbon emissions that we're putting into the atmosphere through fossil fuels. Where's the plan? Once again, you're bringing home a steady paycheck. Your wages have increased, but so has your chances of getting cancer increased. So is your chances of getting sick from contaminated drinking water. Can we have one without the other? And so we're asking our colleagues on the right in discussing this, serious issue going into the next election, which is jobs and the economy. Can they be separated? Or what is the plan? because we can no longer go with the notion that these are once in 100-year storms. They're happening once every year, once every other year, once every 6 months. Right here in the great state of Florida, insurance companies are fleeing. They're fleeing in droves, leaving people either uninsured or having to pay exorbitantly high new insurance rates that are going up on a regular basis with each passing season. So while, both parties have a way of creating jobs, we feel like this is a bad separation. And so we reach out to our colleagues on the right to give this to us as the American people. You often hear when it comes to contaminants in drinking water. I haven't really heard it in food products, but I've definitely heard it when it comes to, drinking water. This thing when it comes to dealing with contaminants, where you're dealing with parts per million. We want to reduce that. We don't want to increase it. So we have to keep a watchful eye. And an attentive ear to, can it be lowered, to parts per billion now? Can it be lowered? We don't know. But what we feel like here at Soluble is that our colleagues on the right, representing the Republican Party, will gut regulations when it comes to job growth at the expense of the American people's health and livelihood, well-being, as far as, have a decent roof over your head. So if you're going to do this, if you're going to run on a policy of drill, baby, drill, and doubling down when it comes to fossil fuels, our position here at Soluble is that, you should give us the answers or the plan, for what it's going to be when I'm sick or when the storm comes and my property is no longer inhabitable or livable. What am I going to do then? Oftentimes, and you saw this with the movie dealing with I can't call the lawyer woman's name now, Erin Brockovich. You saw this in the movie Erin Brockovich, where she was portrayed by Julia Roberts. These big corporations, study polluting, big polluters. Where are our colleagues on the right to call this out? So this is something that you, the American people, must know. And as Democratic voters, we have to see now why we must rally on this issue. Because it's dealing with, our health and well-being. What price is worth it? Our position here at Soluble is that, $150,000, $250,000 a year job or whatever the salary may be is not worth poisoning the water more, polluting the air more, poisoning the earth, period. And so that's where we're at, and we feel like that's where you should be as the American people when it comes to the economy, job growth, and job creation in the country. Do you want to be richer and sicker? Do you want to be richer quicker at the expense of getting sick? At the expense of, not being able to afford homeowners insurance? Not knowing whether your property is going to be standing from one year to the next? Then what is the point of having the money if you don't have a safe place to dwell in with this money? If you have a large salary that you're collecting on a weekly, bi-weekly, or whatever monthly basis, but at the same time your doctor visits are increasing, you're being diagnosed with things that you don't understand, how they came about. Well, it's a good chance that they've came about because regulations have been gutted. These safeguards have been taken away by a Republican administration, and pollution is the order of the day. And in their world, in their world, the ends justifies the means. Here you are, you're sick. You've been diagnosed with a cancer that's progressively, slowly but progressively taking your life. And you have these Republican politicians who you voted in office saying, that's a sacrificial lamb. He died for the country. How? How? So our position here at Soluble is that we can produce clean energy jobs going into the future, and at the same time, save the environment, protect the environment. And this is what we have to, look at as voters. And this is what we're asking here tonight at Soluble. What price is it worth? What salary is it worth? What take-home pay is it worth? We all need jobs. We all need jobs to pay for our goods and services, to pay for our bills. So the fundamental question is, can we produce these jobs and at the same time protect the environment and protect our health and well-being, not just physical health, but even mental health? And we feel here at Soluble, the answer is yes, that we can do these things. So we're, on behalf of all of us as Americans, as human beings dwelling on this planet, we're reaching out to our Republican colleagues on the right and of utmost importance, Republican voters, to take a long look at this one single solitary splitting hair when it comes to how jobs are created in the country. And ask yourself, first and foremost, can we produce good paying jobs in the country with safeguards in place in the form of regulations and protect our environment, and at the same time bring home a healthy salary? Our position here at Soluble is that, the answer is yes, we can do it. So, Democrats, we're going to hear it, because nothing has changed. Republicans are going to always be against regulations. It's not, as we've demonstrated, it's not because it leaves them totally broke. It's not that it leaves them totally broke. But this is, when it comes to regulating and protecting the environment and everyday American workers, this is greed in one of its purest forms. That's what this all boils down to when it comes to regulations, whether we're going to enforce them or whether we're going to take them away. This is greed because, as demonstrated in the example, when you put certain regulations in place, it doesn't break the employer. It does not totally bankrupt said business owner or owner of corporation. It doesn't bankrupt them. It causes them to have to spend. So, that's where we're at. I can't hire, from a perspective of the right and our colleagues on the right, I can't hire and put people on the clock and give them a good salary because regulations are killing me. That's not the case. That's not the case. So you lose a couple of billion, but you still have billions. And so this is where it's at. This is the push and pull that we see from both sides. Now, as Democrats, once again, we have to go out on the stumps, on the podium, and make the case to the American people as to why the way that Democrats are creating jobs in this country and producing job growth and steady job growth in the country is not something done in a way that kills jobs, that puts a wet blanket on job growth. This is just simply the Republican base on the right, in the form of the wealthy, who they vehemently go out to protect. This is just a whining, if you will, because they have to spend this extra money to either A, protect workers, or B, protect the environment. And both are very much valuable American assets, especially in the form of people. So, There you have it. Plain and simple in a nutshell. Both sides are job creators. We're not going to, have anything negative to say if it's not called for. Even though we're staunchly Democrat here and we're trying to solve, we can't solve it by putting out false information on Republicans or, cooking the books, or putting, misinformation out there. Both sides have, a decent record when it comes to job growth and job creation. And so that is the stark difference to the American voter. More regulations or if I will, regulations that are necessary on any given job, having to do with any particular company, where it protects the American worker or the environment, it's not a bad regulation. It's not a job killer. It's just in the form of greed that these millionaires and billionaires don't want to spend to protect you, the American worker. So there you have it, to the American people, to the American voter, Republican and Democrat. This is pretty much what regulations mean in a nutshell. To those on the right, it's a job killer because they don't want to protect their workers. They want to create the most net profit, gross profit or whatever, most take-home pay that they can take home. And the American worker be damned. That's what it is, plain and simple, because in their mind, you're expendable. If he dies or if I fire him, I'll hire another one. So that's pretty much where it's at. And the Republican Party and Republican candidates who are, saying things that they think that will contribute to job growth and a healthy economy, they're not telling you this. They're not trying to protect the American worker. Of course, there's growth there. But what kind of growth is it? Because the more we're growing in that way, the more we're polluting. The more people are getting sick. In the name of what? Corporate profits. Corporate profits. Because these owners of said corporations or businesses, they're not out there in the trenches to be exposed to whatever byproduct that their product may be producing. They're not out there getting exposed or getting sick. So you're expendable. You're expendable. And we want to take home as much as we can. So, make no mistake about it. As far as regulations, it's only a job killer from a Republican perspective because you have to spend a little bit more to protect workers in the environment. So what does that say about our colleagues on the right when it comes to how they feel about the value of the life of an American worker? Well, you work them until they drop dead, or they're so sick that they can't come to work, and then you're ready to replace them with the next pawn in the game. As Democrats, we see it different. We want to protect the American worker. Allow him to go out and do a decent day's work for a decent day's pay and live a happy and healthy life. What is the problem there? So you won't hear it from, candidates on the right. You won't hear this. You won't hear them go into great detail as far as, another thing, the environment. All of a sudden, wages, high wages, high corporate profits. They come before the environment. Oftentimes these politicians and/or the corporate bosses that they protect and that they cover for, they're constantly jet setting around the globe. They're not exposed like you and I are. You go out, you do a decent day's work, you go home to your neighborhood. You go home to your environment. Can we fish in the streams now and eat said fish? There was once upon a time where these were actually freshwater streams that produce living life, that produce food for human consumption. And a lot of these rivers, streams are contaminated now. They have levels of pollution, and where you dare not eat or consume the things that are growing in these and living in these waters. And what is the reason why? So a few millionaires and billionaires can get even richer. Our environment, our rivers, our streams, the fresh air that we breathe has to take the hit and pay the price. Just for 1% of the population, 1 to 5% of the population to keep their profits coming, keep their pockets stuffed. And so this is what it is, ladies and gentlemen, as far as it relates to job growth. Go ahead. As it relates to job growth, from a Republican point of view, and as it relates to a strong economy and job growth from a Democrat point of view. This is it, plain and simple. They both have a pretty decent record of creating jobs. But one party is going to protect the American worker and the environment, and one party is not. And so, if we can answer that question, yes. If we can answer that question, yes, that we can have job growth in this country, along with clean air, clean water, and protections for workers, then it's a no-brainer. We have to go with the party or with the ideal, the American ideal of job growth, along with clean air and water and worker protections. We have to go with it. And even if, the growth wasn't as fast, as I said, what is it worth? Where you have a fat paycheck, but you're getting sicker faster, or you're not sure if your property is going to be intact from one year to the next. You're basically going to take that fat paycheck, or those increased weekly earnings, and you're going to constantly be spending them to rebuild for medication. We already see how prescription drugs prices, tend to go through the roof. Once again, dealing with corporate profits. So there's nothing there for you. There's nothing there for you. Every American worker is going to need an Aaron Brockovich in the form of class action lawsuits if we go down this road of job creation and job growth in the country, of doing it this way. And so, in closing, that's what it is. And that's what, we're hoping here at Soluble can be an eye-opening revelation for you. We can have serious job growth in the country with a clean environment. We can. And we must push our politicians to do so. And, pretty much it's on the ballot in 2024. Your health and well-being, your property value is on the ballot for 2024 in the form of job creation, how jobs are created in this country, and wages. An increase in wages. A steady employment level. It's on the ballot. One side wants to give you more money, but at the same time more debt, greater pollution. The water is contaminated. We have skull and crossbone signs all over the place. This is what the future will look like under Republican job growth. And so when you hear that regulations is, a wet blanket on job growth, or things like it's a job killer, this is pretty much what it means. I don't want to spend, out of all of my billions, and I say that with an S, out of all of my billions, I don't want to spend any of it, or, the least amount that I have to on worker safety or protecting the environment. And I guess from the point of a millionaire, a billionaire, they can afford to have that kind of a mentality, that state of mind, because they're wealthy. They can buy all the fresh water that they need and or want. They can jet set off to another part of the planet where they're not infected or affected by what you're affected by every day in working and simply going home to your neighborhood that's polluted or contaminated. So, the decision is pretty much yours. We here at Soluble have come forward to solve and to bring clarity as much as we possibly can, to any given situation. And that's our take on the issue of job growth and the economy in this country. Now, under the former President Trump, we had job creation and job growth. The growth steadily increased up until the time of the pandemic. And then once again, you saw it. It's proven. It makes the case for us here at Soluble. You had the pandemic and you had a Republican administration, or from a conservative point of view, telling you, the American people, don't stop what you're doing. This is greed in its finest form. Don't stop what you're doing. Keep going out. Let's go for herd immunity, because it's all about profit. People are getting sick, dropping dead like flies, left and right. And from a conservative Republican point of view, don't stop what you're doing. Don't shut anything down. Keep doing what you're doing. Now, I've saw a lot of movies and read certain stories or tales of people who had, say, for instance, cattle ranches. Vast herds. Large amounts of cattle, sheep. Whatever, hogs. And I've never seen, a situation where there's something that breaks out, some kind of epidemic that breaks out, amongst a herd of animals. And, by most accounts, you have ranchers and or farmers separating the sick from those that haven't been affected in order to keep more healthy alive. But here you have a Republican and conservative ideology of there's a pandemic and it's deadly, and we haven't quite wrapped our arms around where it originated from. We have to get a vaccine together, and this, that, and the third, and people are dying. But from a Republican point of view, and once again, this is greed as it relates to regulation. This is a form of greed. You have the former president and those on the right of the same mind state of profits over everything else, telling you, the American people, to keep going, to go on out, go to work, don't stop what you're doing. What happens when that person that listens to that advice or take heed to their commander in chief? What happens when they go out to work and they become infected and die? Where's the compensation for their family? Where are the people that are showing up at the door when it like they would in wartime when a military soldier dies? Where are the people showing up at your door with condolences, some form of comfort through financial compensation, on behalf of a lost family member, because this family has to keep going. The bills don't stop. And this is the point of view from the rich, from the wealthy, who we don't begrudge. But when the pandemic hit and there was a freeze on evictions, the wealthy were up in arms. The property owners were up in arms. So this is it in a nutshell. We can create jobs in this country, good paying jobs, great wage paying jobs, and keep pollution down. We can do it. Now, our colleagues on the right, they can tell you about, how to create jobs. But when these jobs are harmful to the environment or harmful to the health of American workers, there's no answer. Why? Because they only care about millionaires and billionaires who we don't begrudge for the money that they've made or the wealth that they hold. But as far as having any regard for the everyday working man, you don't see it there. You don't see it in that kind of philosophical thinking when it comes to job creation in this country. It's all about profit. It's all about soaring corporate profits. And so that's it. That's the difference between job growth on the left, where we feel as though we can create great wage paying jobs, and job creation on the right, where you know anything goes in the name of profits and soaring profits. Anything goes. So you have pollution going on there in the river and stream. Well, he's making money. You have workers getting sick left and right from some form of cancer that they don't know where it's coming from. Well, look, the people are making money here, and so you are pushed to the wayside. Something to think about, going into the 2024 election. Your health and well-being is on the line when it comes to job growth. Our environment, the air we breathe. We're going to put ourselves in jeopardy, a self-inflicted wound, if we don't show up at the polls as Democrats and independents to ensure that we have people in place that are going to protect us. And at the same time, increase our wages, give us decent paying jobs versus our colleagues on the right, where nothing matters but corporate profits. And if you get sick, good luck, you're on your own. If the air is contaminated, the water is poisoned, and it's affecting your health, good luck, you're on your own. Now, we'll look for answers to these questions. We'll look for what their solution is, or what they propose to do when it comes to regulations that should be in place to protect the environment and the American worker. We're going to look for it going into the third election, the third debate, and we'll see what happens. But this is something that we feel here at Soluble is that where we had to break it down so that the American voter, can make an informed decision. And that's where it lies. That's where it begins and ends. Both sides create jobs, decent paying jobs. But only one side creates decent paying jobs and then has steady job growth that you can enjoy. And at the same time, there's no risk of getting sick or sicker. And there's the risk diminishes or dwindles when it comes to environmental disasters, because those on the left, in the form of Democratic politicians, are trying to do everything that they can to lower carbon emissions, to make it safe, to live, work, and play in America, to make it safe to live, work, and play. And profits should come second to that, because we as human beings, should realize that money is nothing, without good health to enjoy it. It's nothing without good health to enjoy it. So think about that, because as I said, Republican politicians are only considering millionaires and billionaires who, in most cases, have the best health care insurance, have the best doctors, and have the ability to, get out of harm's way when it comes to things that may be going on bad in the environment. They're not affected by, the things that are going on in their plant operations, because they're in the trenches working every day. It's you, the American worker. So it's definitely on the ballot going into 2024. Job creation, where you can enjoy yourself after bringing home a wage, feeling healthy, feeling confident that, your property is going to be intact, and there's not going to be any climatological disasters that may cause to lose said property. There is a way, and that is the Democratic way. And on the other side, you have the Republican way. Jobs and sickness, corporate greed rules the day, or jobs and good health, where you have decent worker pay and worker protections on your everyday job that is not breaking. And this is real important to you, the American voter, because this is where, you hear the Republicans so adamantly, define this fact, or this made up fact that it's a job killer. They're basically saying, we're not going to hire you. We have to protect you. We'll only hire you and put you to work, if we can put you in there with the least amount of protections. If your safety and well-being, doesn't have, we don't have to prioritize that in the form of hundreds of thousands of dollars in different safety equipment or what have you. And that's basically where it's at. So, now, and it's up to you to decide. Job growth with worker protections and a clean environment being produced by the left, or job growth with rampant pollution, poisoning of our rivers and streams, toxic death being produced on a regular basis in the form of poisoning our air, cancer-causing agents from byproducts of the things that are being produced by these corporate polluters, and nothing there at the end of the day to protect you when you're sick, when you can't come to work. They're ready to replace you, but you haven't heard that as of yet. But now consider yourself informed and look for it coming up for the next primary debate from the Republicans. Let's look for it, because it's real important. And so, you can't be misled or tricked now that Soluble has put this information out there. You're going to get this job growth from the right. It's going to be jobs being produced. But what about your mental well-being, your physical well-being? And this is, the stark difference in between how both parties see fit to grow the economy and produce jobs. And as I said, we look forward to the next Republican primary debate to see. And Soluble, our goal is to keep you informed, keep you in the loop of what's going on, the hows and whys. And believe me, when it comes to regulation, this is where, the separation begins. Democrats care about workers and the environment. Republicans don't. They only care about corporate profit. So it's up to you to decide now that you're in the know. We thank you for joining us tonight here at Soluble. As always, even though we're staunch Democrats and we're firmly entrenched in Democratic corners, we're waiting to hear something good from our Republican colleagues. And when we hear it, see it, feel it, we will give it to you as the American people. Because our goal is to solve here, to make politics more amicable, where our politicians from opposing parties are working across the aisle. That's what it's about at the end of the day. Solving. So we will keep you informed. We encourage, that blue wave going into 2024. And there's only one way to do it. Now, trust and believe, if we lay back, if we hold back, if we don't show up, then this is what you have in the form of job growth. Republicans are going to come into the Oval Office. They're going to gut regulations, and you will begin to see that workers will become sicker faster. There will be further havoc wreaked on the environment in the form of frequent storms, floods, rain events, severe drought. That's affecting prices at the grocery store. That's affecting prices at the hardware store. Climate change. So stay tuned. Our goal, as always, is to keep you informed in order to solve and stop the political bickering. Let's push for a 2024 blue wave like America has never seen, because at the end of the day, we feel like here at Soluble that of the two ideals coming from these two different parties, the Democratic way is the best way forward for America and American citizens. And if there's anyone out there that's listening who begs to differ, who has a different opinion, who has a different approach from a Republican point of view, we welcome it. We welcome it because that is the best way to solve, by bringing all ideas together, all opinions together, in order to shake it all out and come up with what's best for us all as human beings inhabiting the planet. So until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. We hope that this podcast tonight discussing the economy and job growth has been very informative and eye-opening to you. But trust and believe, you're getting sicker faster with less regulation versus having more regulation with job growth and keeping you healthy. So until the next time and the next issue, which we will be discussing, leading up into the 2024 election, whether it be foreign policy, whether it be crime, whether it be, obesity, sickness in America, healthcare in America, we're going to break it all down. But this is just one out of many issues dealing with the economy and job growth in America. And what we feel here at Soluble is explaining it to you, the American people, regulations versus no regulation, and how it affects us in our environment and in our daily health. So that concludes this podcast. And we hope that, once again, we have been very informative when it comes to the economy and the way jobs are produced in this country from a left-wing perspective versus a right-wing perspective. So until the next time and the next issue, this is Soluble signing off. Thank you for joining us. Good night and God bless. Thank you.